Tom, vous êtes né en Hongrie. Vous êtes en fait un Européen de naissance. You're Hungarian by origin, so you're European, like us.
Yes.
But you grew up in Toronto. Mais en fait, Tom, à l'âge de 4 ans, a déménagé au Canada, où il a grandi à Toronto. Et donc, comme un clin d'œil à vos origines, je vais vous montrer en fait le bienvenue dans votre langue maternelle. I will show you actually, at the same time as I pronounce it, the welcome to Rennes in your mother tongue. And I'll try to pronounce it. Et donc, effectivement, la phrase en hongrois est Üdvözölünk Rennesben, nagyon örülünk, hogy itt van velünk.
Wow.
Bravo!
Amazing. Thank you. Köszönöm szépen.
Et donc, je lui ai souhaité effectivement la bienvenue chez nous, chez les Bretons, à Rennes. Vous avez étudié la psychologie et l'économie à Princeton, mais en deuxième année d'études, vous avez préféré de vous consacrer entièrement à TerraCycle, puis récemment à Loop. So you actually studied at Princeton, but as a sophomore, you decided to rather start TerraCycle. En 2009, Tom, d'ailleurs, a été traité, en fait, son cas et son entreprise était traitée sur National Geographic, donc il y a 10 ans, par rapport au fait qu'il est un géant des déchets. On parlait à l'époque en anglais de garbage moguls on National Geographic. Yeah. Votre intervention d'aujourd'hui est intitulée « Les contraintes vous forcent à être créatif » et c'est l'un des moteurs. So the constraints that you will speak about today, how did they change? How did they moved since you were 19? What is different today?
You know, I think if you think about this entire issue of waste, and it's very exciting that you were speaking about the future of what garbage will look like here in France, is that it's always been a problem. You know, for the past 20 years, people have been speaking of it as a problem. But I think now the public is aware and has moved it from being a problem to a crisis. You know, the idea of ocean plastic is something that everyone is now aware of in a very emotional and direct way. And this has led politicians, especially in Europe, and the whole world is really leading from Europe on banning plastic bags, banning straws, banning takeaway food packaging, all these different examples. So I think we're in a really amazing moment as a turning point. We have to keep pushing, because I think if we say that, oh, by banning a straw, everything is okay, that would be a really big problem. We have to use that as just the beginning and then push for more. But we also, as individuals, have to realize that we are voting for the way we want the future to be with what we buy. And if you buy disposable things, you are voting with money for more of those disposable things to appear. And it's very important that we accept that and hold the responsibility ourselves as individuals, and not just to hope the big companies, the people in politics or retailers make the shift.
Thanks, Tom. By the way, Mr. Chenegera is now busy somewhere else, but as he said, he's interested, so he will be back for your speech, I think.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Loïc Chenegera, d'avoir resté avec nous ce petit moment. Donc, Monsieur le Président, pour une question de confort pour tous, il serait peut-être préférable, si vous le souhaitez, s'il vous plaît, de gagner la partie basse de la scène, parce que sinon les personnes qui sont derrière ne peuvent pas voir la conférence qui va se tenir maintenant. Et je voulais juste également, s'il vous plaît, vous rappeler que vous avez la possibilité de vous munir d'un casque de traduction pour ceux qui n'ont pas fait et qui ont besoin. Durant la conférence, évidemment, vous allez avoir la traduction en simultané. Donc, c'est dommage. Au moment où je vous invite de partir, il y a un petit peu de pluie. Ça va, c'est les arbres. Donc, je vous remercie infiniment pour votre compréhension, mais les personnes qui sont derrière ayant aussi besoin de voir le conférencier, c'est vrai qu'il est nécessaire de pouvoir dégager un petit peu la vue. Merci beaucoup.
Donc, deux dernières questions avant que Tom commence sa présentation en tant que tel sur TerraCycle et sur Loop. Tom, you're 37 today. It's X generation, but you work with people who are Generation Y and Z.
Sure.
How do you motivate them? La question que je pose, c'est Tom, aujourd'hui, quand il a commencé, il avait 19 ans, aujourd'hui, il en a 37. Mais les gens qui travaillent avec lui, majoritairement, sont des générations suivantes, de la Y et de la Z. Alors, comment il les motive, comment il les manage?
It's an interesting question. You know, we are today, I think, about 350 employees spread across the world. The vast majority of our team members are young people. We have every age and race and so on, but we're majority young and we're actually majority female. And you'll be happy to know in most of our offices around the world, our most popular demographic are French girls, make up the majority of our workforce. Even in countries like the UK or Australia, it's a unique thing. I don't know what happens, but it's somehow who comes and wants to join our team. And the most important thing for us in motivating this type of work is not necessarily money, it's much more the purpose of what we do. And to me, that's very exciting because if people are coming to join a business because of the purpose that it brings, it makes it very easy for the business to stay on track with that purpose and not to make compromises, not to do things that only make profit and not create some form of value. And our mission is to eliminate the idea of waste, and that's what everyone deeply believes in. And I think you'll see this in the presentation I give, but the value of purpose is incredibly high. It allows you to innovate in ways you couldn't innovate before. It allows for people to join you, people to volunteer, as well as large organizations to really shift the way they behave and do some pretty exciting things, and you'll see all that in the presentation.
Et la toute dernière question, Tom, vous parlez effectivement de la raison d'être d'une société de purpose. Alors aujourd'hui, vous parlez aussi souvent de pouvoir et de la prise de pouvoir. You very often speak about the power and the empowerment.
Yes.
So not the internal stakeholders, but the external ones, us, citizens, consumers. How can we empower ourselves so that we would get the power?
So this is a very interesting question because in working all over the world for 20 years, what I constantly see is individuals say, I don't know what to do. I feel really like a small actor in a large system. And it's the big companies, that are ruining the world, and they are manipulating us through advertising to buy these things and so on. That's, many times the feedback I receive. But I think it's actually a completely different approach. I think that really all the power is with the individual consumer. Because what large companies are trying to figure out is not to sell you something you don't want, but to identify what do you want and to give that to you as cheaply, as conveniently as possible. And so for me, when I travel the world, one of the things I love to do is to go to supermarkets, whether it's in New Zealand or Brazil or China, because when you walk into a supermarket, it is the reflection of that country's desires. Not just what is on the shelf, but how much of whatever is on the shelf is there. That is exactly the desire of the public. So when you go shopping, think about it this way. Whatever you buy, 2 more will appear tomorrow. 1 to replace what you purchased, and 1 to signify the trend that is what people want. And everything you didn't buy, 1 less will appear. So the act of not buying is one of the most active votes you can make. And I think one of the really exciting movement that came from France, the movement of degrowth, I was just reading some articles on it recently, but it's been around for a while, is really an interesting idea. And you can vote for that by first not buying things. And then whatever you do buy, vote in a way that it's not just for you, but do you want more of that object to appear? And you don't have to become an expert at products or understand the details of them, but I think with that perspective, we can really very, very quickly change the world. A good quote I heard earlier is, that many people say that that God was made, or man was made in God's image, and I would say it's the opposite. We made God in our image, and that is the exact same idea with consumption. We have all the power, but we don't really know it. And the problem there is then we're driving the ship completely blind, just based on emotional desires. And if we shift that, everything will shift incredibly quickly. So we should really think about that deeply when we engage in the market.
D'accord, Tom, on va retenir ça, on va voter avec nos pieds et avec nos caddies. Et je vous laisse la place. The floor is yours for your presentation.
Thank you.
One last thing.
Yes.
N'hésitez pas à penser aux questions. On reviendra effectivement pour vos questions à la fin de l'exposé de Tom qui va durer environ 40 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to speak to you about this fascination of mine in garbage. And before I get into what I'm going to tell you about, why am I so fascinated with garbage? I think that it's one of the most exciting fields that no one thinks about. So think about it this way. Every object you see here today, from the carpet I'm standing on, from our clothing, to the cameras, every object in here will one day be property of the garbage industry, with not a single exception. Everything you own will one day belong to the garbage industry. It'll one day be property here in France of Veolia or Suez. And not only will everything you own one day belong to them, you will have paid them to take it too. For how big that is, it's incredible how few people are attracted to the industry and want to be involved in it. So for how big it is, the level of innovation is incredibly small. And it has some very unique properties. Garbage is the only material that someone will pay you to get rid of. Every other material, someone will want you to pay for it. But garbage is one that people will also pay you to remove. So I started TerraCycle 16 years ago. Today we operate in all these countries around the world. One of the things you'll see in the countries where we operate is they are all developed countries, like France. We have 21 markets like that. In fact, here in France, Suez recently purchased 30% of our French business. And that example exists in many countries around the world with different large garbage companies. We had to be able to enter into the emerging markets like Thailand and India. We actually had to do it as a foundation, as a charity. And one of the big learnings I've had is that the way garbage behaves in the developed countries, like here in France, is very different than how it behaves in countries like Thailand. The big difference is here there is infrastructure. So the goal is to move garbage from being disposed, as you heard earlier, from going to a landfill or an incinerator and being recycled or reused. While in Thailand, Cambodia, Southeast Asia, Central Eastern Europe, Northern Africa, Central America, there is very little infrastructure. So there the goal is to move from litter to at least proper management. Now, I want to tell you the story of how this began because we're at a conference about how do you innovate. And we have, just a little context in how this all started. I'm originally from Budapest. When Chernobyl happened, we left. We went to Germany, then Belgium, then Holland. Ended up in Canada as a refugee. And then I went to school in the United States. And my friends, when we got in, we started growing certain plants that we couldn't really figure out how to make work. Now you know all the pot smokers here. And one day my friend calls me and he says, finally I figured out how to make these plants grow really well. And he had been taking organic waste, which, by the way, 50% of the food produced in the world ends up as garbage, 50%. It's a huge challenge. And he was taking the organic waste and feeding it to worms, and the worms were creating worm poop, and he was giving that to the plants, and the plants did incredibly well. And if you garden here, I haven't told you anything new, but as being a 20-year-old guy, that was incredibly new to me. So I came back to Princeton, and I wanted to create a company to turn lots of organic garbage into lots of worm poop. And this was the first moment I really discovered this idea of what I would call step-back innovation. Many times when we innovate, we accept the problem for what it is and we take a step forward. That would be like putting one more blade on a razor or changing the angles of a toothbrush. But the real question we have to ask is, why do certain things exist? And then maybe the answer to oral hygiene is not just brushing our teeth with a toothbrush, maybe it's something completely different. So when I was thinking about this idea of how do we take organic waste and convert it, I had this moment. I was sitting on a toilet and asking myself, what's the purpose of a toilet? And if you really think about it, the only purpose of a toilet is to remove our waste from us as fast as possible. And that speaks to a really important lesson in garbage, which is that everyone hates it. You want to get away from it. That's why no one thinks about it. That's why there's low innovation in it. And even animals want to get away from their waste as fast as possible. So this became our first invention, which is a toilet for worms. Basically, the organic waste went in the middle, the conveyor belts moved it in an outward direction, and the worms moved in an inward direction away from their poop into the new food. And it worked incredibly well, but no one would invest in this concept at all. Go figure. So we were very desperate. We had no money. I had at this point left school to do this full time. And, you know, many times innovation also comes from the greatest desperation. And we needed to start selling what we created, but we couldn't even afford packaging. So we said, wait a minute, if we make a product from garbage, maybe we can package it in garbage. So we went to all the recycling containers that were put out on, at the houses in Princeton and started sorting out people's used water bottles. And we learned three very interesting and very different lessons about garbage in doing this. The first is it's illegal to go through people's waste, so I spent 2 hours in jail reflecting on this learning. It's still a problem, actually, going through immigration, even 20 years later. The second, though, was much more interesting, which is we learned that garbage is very standardized. And this became our first product ever, which is packaging directly in used bottles. And whether it's a Pepsi bottle or a Coca-Cola bottle, everything is the same except the shape. So you can run used bottles in a high-speed bottling line. And then we learned the third lesson. When this was starting to be adapted by large retailers like Walmart and Target, these large US retailers, we learned the third lesson, which is that garbage has intellectual property rights. In other words, this product, fertilizer in a soda bottle, was infringing on Coca-Cola's shape and Pepsi's shape. And so we had a really difficult moment. We didn't know what to do, so we asked the lawyers of these companies, Coke and Pepsi, to visit us and see what we were doing. And this was the first time I really understood the power of purpose. You know, we took these lawyers to our inner city factory. We had taken an old building that was completely ruined, turned it into a green facility. And they saw that we were taking soda bottles from schools, we were washing them, we were putting the organic waste, once the worms had eaten it, into it. Everything was about purpose, and very quickly they shifted their point of view and wanted to support the project, not kill the project. And we got the first license in the world, still the only license in the world, to package shit in their distinctive shape and sell it. And that's how TerraCycle really began. And we grew and we grew. Then we asked ourselves, are we accomplishing our mission? And our mission is to eliminate the idea of waste by making products out of garbage. And we realized that if you make a product out of garbage, then the product becomes the most important aspect. And even if you use garbage, you're going to pick the very best type of garbage to make the product. And you would never touch the things that were mentioned before, like cigarette butts or dirty diapers or other very difficult materials. So we again took a big step back. And we wanted to ask ourselves, how do we really accomplish our purpose, which is to solve waste, which means we have to understand where waste comes from. So waste, for example, doesn't come from nature whatsoever. It's a human idea. And if it's a human idea, we have to ask ourselves, when was it invented by us? And I've written many books on this now, and I can tell you it only happened 70 years ago. In 1950, advertisements like this started appearing. And the idea of disposability was invented only 70 years ago. This advertisement basically says, why bother reusing something when you can simply throw it away? It's way easier. And disposability brought out unbelievable convenience and affordability. You know, today, for example, France has some refillable bottle systems. You know, if you go to a restaurant, you can get your Coca-Cola in a refillable bottle, but you can't anymore in a supermarket. Refillable beer systems have gone away. Even milk systems used to exist like that and don't anymore. And it's all because we are addicted to this idea of convenience and affordability. That is so important to us today. So what happens with all this garbage? 25% ends up in our oceans, And by the way, this is what everyone thinks ocean plastic looks like. And we run one of the largest supply chains in the world in ocean plastic. Only 1% floats at the top. 99% is at the very bottom. So if you went scuba diving in the Mediterranean, you would just see garbage and garbage at the bottom. And it's not one area of the world, it's everywhere. So 25% still goes here. 2% or 3%, depending on who you ask, is what is recycled. And the balance we like to put in a pile, which we call landfilling, or burn it. Very popular in Europe would be to burn waste. A little better than landfilling, but still really, really negative. So the first thing we wanted to try to figure out is how do we take those objects, like dirty diapers, chip bags, coffee capsules, whatever, that end up being burned or landfilled, and be able to turn them into something else. And to understand that, again, we have to take a step back and understand why is something recyclable today or not recyclable today. And many people think that recycling is something to do with technical ability to do something. You know, can you technically recycle something or can you not? And it has to do with that, but much, much more importantly, it has to do with money. What a normal garbage company here in France, like Veolia or Suez, what they're going to look at in garbage is, can they take value out of it? Can they make money on certain aspects of the garbage? And that's what we call recycling. So what makes something recyclable is this very simple equation, which is, if it's profitable to recycle something, it will be. And if it's not profitable to recycle something, it won't be. A simple example is, take a plastic bottle. If the plastic bottle is clear and there's no color in it, it will be recycled across Europe because the clear plastic has a high value, higher than the cost to collect and process it. Here's, by the way, another way to look at the same thing. But if there's a little color put into it, you know, like a Perrier bottle or a 7-Up bottle or a Mountain Dew bottle, they all have a little color in them, it will now not be recycled anymore because the color takes the value down to the point where a garbage company would not make money at it. It's that sensitive. So what I do want to show you is everything can be recycled with no exception, everything. I'm just going to show you a few examples. So the first thing we try to look at is, can waste be reused? Here's an example where 35 million plants were packaged, not in new planting pots, but in used yogurt containers or butter containers. 35 million plants. Everything you see here, whether it's soccer balls, this is upcycling, so that before was reuse. Upcycling is where you don't destroy the waste, you put it into a new context. This is about a million footballs were made for the World Cup recently. Or here's bags from candy wrappers. Upcycling is really fun and innovative, but very few people want to walk around with an M&M bag looking like this. But it can be exciting. These are 2 dresses we made for museums, and let's just say you're always ready to party with that particular dress. Here's a friend of ours wearing a jacket we made for him in upcycling. So you can really have fun with it, but it is relatively low volume because how many people want to wear something like that except him on TV? But our offices, whether in Germany, whether in Canada, whether in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, or in London, every detail is made from waste, even our headquarters in New Jersey. And you can do a lot with it. But the vast majority of the solutions to garbage need to come from the science of it. How do you rip it apart into its new materials? So for example, cigarettes, we today recycle in France and 11 countries around the world. We are, next month, going to recycle our 1 billionth cigarette. And we take them, we shred them, take the filter, which is made from a plastic called cellulose acetate, that turns into those types of objects, and the ash, tobacco, and paper is made into compost. Everything can be recycled. Now, as mentioned in the introduction, we have our own TV show. We did 4 seasons. I'm going to play you a little clip from one of them where we recycled a really unique waste stream.
Can I be the science guy? Already taken. Take another one.
Tonight,
I found another partner who's interested in recycling latex, and I got some samples of their product.
a new assignment
You want to collect used condoms.
I can tell you're really excited about it, Rick, so...
Thrilled.
might be a bit of a stretch,
Condoms are not really something I
use?
even for these scientists.
You can use it as a helmet.
Human Resources, all new, tonight at 7:30 on Pivot.
So this is just it's a comedy, this TV show, but we were taking, in this case, condoms, but also plastic gloves or balloons are all made from a very special type of latex or nitrile, which is very difficult to recycle. So our science team invented a solution where you freeze them with liquid nitrogen or cryo-freeze. That makes them very rigid. You can then break it into a powder, and that powder can be made into new plastic gloves on the fingertips. So everything can go around. Here, for example, are trucks, where 30% of the plastic has been replaced with used potato chip bags. Or these are exercise parks in London made from aerosol cans. Or these are playgrounds made from flip-flops. Or these are gardens made from cosmetic waste. Everything can go around. So then the question becomes, how do you make this make an economic sense? Because everything I'm showing you costs more to do than the results are worth. And this is the big problem with garbage, is the quality of our waste is getting worse and worse, which makes it less profitable for anyone to want it. So the collection becomes really important. Here in France, 10 million people are doing what I'm describing to you, and across the world, 250 million people are running these programs where they can go to our website now, sign up for free, and collect anything from coffee capsules to kids' pouches to pens and so on. In all these cases, what we try to do is get funding from someone who cares about a waste stream more than someone else. So BIC, for example, in France, funds pen recycling. Or Materne in France funds the recycling for pompots, and so on and so forth. The way a really interesting learning came is that all these programs have to be led by somebody. Someone has to say, I'm going to run and create a program, and it's always women. You know, our company is 75% female. 91% of all the leaders, over 1 million people across the world who run our programs are women, 91%. So the lesson here is women are the ones who are going to save the world. And us men have to learn from that, honor that, and help them succeed. Because it's so disproportional. I've never seen such a statistic play out in every country in the world over and over and over again. Now, they're the ones who set up the collection locations, and then people come and use them. And it could be anywhere. For example, in South Korea, this is what it looks like when people are recycling toothbrushes, electric toothbrushes. Or in Amsterdam, this is a really exciting one. 6 months ago, we launched dirty diaper recycling. So across the city, you will see these bins where you can now put in any brand of dirty diaper, and they come, we build the bins, we service them, and then they're recycled into new industrial products. You can even put femcare, like tampons and pads, into this as well. It could be cosmetics being recycled. It could be aerosol containers. This is a program we launched very recently to collect and recycle baby car seats. This program at a big US retailer collects 250 full truckloads of baby car seats every month it's run. One of the things I've noticed is when you really see the volume of waste, it's really disturbing how much garbage we produce. It's absolutely crazy. So even cigarette recycling in 400 cities around the world now exists, including in regions of France. 6 months ago, we launched chewing gum recycling in Mexico. This is some politicians in Mexico City celebrating that chewing gum can now be recycled. So what I want to show you is, yes, everything can be recycled. The next question then becomes, how do we make everything from garbage? And that became the next big question. And this whole project I'm going to show you in a minute launched for the first time in France. That was the first country where we debuted it. We try to focus on very unique materials. There's not enough time to show you everything, but we talked about ocean plastic before. Here, for example, is a photo of the over 1,000 cleanups we ran last year. This is in Panama. And I picked this photo because in Panama, there is these sandblast islands. If you've been there, these beautiful islands that are all with Aboriginal people who live there. There is no, disposable products except what washes up on their beaches every day. So when you look straight, it looks beautiful. When you look down, it's a disaster. And so we're now collecting all over the world garbage from the ocean, from rivers, lakes, and beaches, including in the coasts of France, both the north and the south. And that waste goes to local warehouses where it's sorted to sort out dead animals and fishing nets and things that may be there. From there, with our partners like Suez, it's turned into a high-grade plastic, and it becomes this, for example, which is the first shampoo bottle in the world made 25% from ocean plastic. Now, I wanted to show you this example because if you're trying to influence a company to embed sustainability into what they're doing, whether it's waste or anything, it's really important to frame it in how they understand systems, which is how do you win? How do you sell more of this type of shampoo than something else? And what we found is by embedding purpose into a product, you can move money around very easily and be able to fund projects like this, and people will love them more, and that will then allow these programs to grow very, very big. This, for example, is in 25 countries around the world, and then other companies started seeing this. This is in the same organization, another shampoo bottle made now 25% from ocean plastic. Here's dish soap, that's 10% ocean plastic. Even here's luxury cosmetic, that's 20%. And it creates an incredible movement as long as you frame it in the right point of view. And that gets us to a big realization we had 3 years ago, which is nothing that I've showed you as the answer. Because recycling is a solution to the symptom of waste, but not to the root cause of waste. We can't recycle our way out of the garbage problem. It's not possible. Even the word recycling depends on the word waste to exist. What we really need to think about, and this became the most recent platform we launched, is how do we reimagine our relationship with products completely? And this platform is called Loop. It was first announced at the World Economic Forum in Davos this January. And I was there along with CEOs of P&G and Pepsi, but the most interesting person was Jennifer, who's the CEO of Greenpeace. First time she ever sat on a panel with the CEOs of these big producers. Loop actually launched for the first time anywhere in the world in France 4 weeks ago in partnership with Carrefour. Then 3 weeks ago in the US with 2 major retailers there. It'll be launching in London in September or October. And then next year in Germany, Japan, Australia, Canada, and the West Coast of the United States. And as always I've said today, we have to take a step back. So if garbage was invented in the 1950s, what did it look like in the 1930s? And it looked like this. And by the way, I have a crazy sort of statistic for you. Let me ask you a question. Okay, if you were alive as a 30-year-old French woman in Paris with middle income, so 30-year-old French woman, Paris, middle income in 1920, how many pieces of clothing would you buy per year? Anyone want to guess? How many? 3, 2. What is it today? 2019, 30-year-old middle-income French girl in Paris, how many pieces of clothing does she buy per year? More. 65. Okay, now, go back to 1920. How long did those pieces of clothing last? They were repaired, of course. How long would they last before they became garbage? 20 years. That was the average length, because we would fix our things. What is it today? No, it's even worse. It's 3 uses. That's the average. After 3 uses, your 30-year-old middle-income French lady will throw it out in the garbage. That's today the average for France, and other countries are even worse. And that's the difference. Back in this time, we fixed our shoes. We valued quality. We valued things to last. And a really interesting point is in these models, the manufacturers owned their packaging. So they were motivated financially to make them long-lasting and durable. And then what happened? In the 1950s, this was invented. And this is an advertisement. Someone paid for this photo. This is an advertisement promoting disposability. This looks to me like one of those cigarette ads, you know, where your doctor recommends cigarettes for you. And this was also a type of advertisement in the 1950s. Crazy time, the 1950s. But what it's promoting is that it's way cheaper and way more convenient to just throw it out and buy something new. And a really weird thing happened. Instead of the packaging being owned by the manufacturer, it became owned by us. But do we really want to own a coffee cup the moment there's no coffee in it? Do we want to own, you know, a package for chocolate when there's no chocolate left in it? And if we don't, why should we? Because the problem when packaging becomes our property, it becomes a cost to the manufacturer. And manufacturers, their goal is to reduce cost. So if you think about a beverage company like Pepsi, in France, they first began in refillable bottles. Then they moved to aluminum cans, then cartons, then plastic bottles, then cartons, and then pouches. That's where everything is moving towards. And yes, things become cheaper. They also become lighter, but they become much less recyclable and much less exciting. And so this is the trend we live in today. All of our products every day are becoming lower quality every day. Every time we wake up, the costs are being reduced and the quality goes down and they become less recyclable and our garbage problem increases. So the idea for Loop was, how do we solve for the unintended negatives of disposability, which is lower quality of products as well as lower recycling rates, while maintaining the benefits, which is affordability and convenience. And the big shift in the thinking was, why should you own something you don't want to own? So in Loop, what happens is the product is, or the package is not owned by you, but it's owned by the manufacturer permanently. You just borrow it. And by doing that, the manufacturer now becomes motivated to make things long-lasting and durable. And that unlocks some really interesting things that we're just learning as we speak. It unlocks this idea of durable design. And durable design allows for products to be reusable, which is about 75% better for the environment from a carbon point of view. But it also allows for amazing design to be created and more exciting materials to be used. I'm going to show you some examples. This, for example, is how ice cream is now available through the Loop platform. This is with Nestle, where it's no longer made from paper with some plastic in it, which is how ice cream packaging is made today. But it's made from double-wall stainless steel, so it keeps your ice cream frozen for longer. And, of course, it's reusable and much more beautiful. Here's an example of what a fabric care package now looks like. This is in the US market. I'll let this play. And this is what it looks like in real life. This is the #1 fabric container in the US. It could be simple examples, like this is how mayonnaise now is coming with Unilever and reusable packaging, or salad dressing and reusable packaging. But it's amazing when also design is added. So when Le Sueur, which is one of the most important oil companies here in France, decided to do cooking oil, this is what their package now looks like. This will be available here. I think it's already actually available here in the French market. Or some companies started thinking about their heritage, because things used to be in refillable packaging in the past. So Tropicana and Quaker, for the French market, this is only available in France, created for the first time a refillable orange juice container and a refillable Quaker container. Some companies continue to echo their past by Coca-Cola, for example, in France, bringing back the refillable bottle for consumers, not just in restaurants. But it also can be very innovative. Here, for example, is the new motor oil container. This will be available in November in Europe and in the US. This is with Shell, and this is now made from stainless steel, so that when you send in your container, it just gets cleaned and reused. And if you put your used oil inside it from your car, that also gets recycled. So you can change the oil in your car, send in all the used oil gets recycled, and the package gets reused. And that's what your new oil container looks like. This is, for example, what dish soap now looks like in durable engineered plastic. Plastic is not the negative, by the way. It's throwing things out is the real negative. This is more of an eco-friendly example. This is a seventh generation, which is a very environmental brand doing hand soap or dish soap. All the way to this is what wipes look like. What we found in Loop, we came to it from this perspective of how do we solve garbage? But very quickly we realized that it's also a major opportunity for design. So for example, Ren, which is a cosmetic company, they first began with just simple reusable bottles. But this is what their packaging will look like next year. So you can see the huge difference between this version and this version. Both are reusable, but look at how much design has improved. It suddenly allows for designs to be created that were never possible before. When Unilever looked at this for their deodorant range, this is what they came up with. This is now reusable deodorant containers in these big brands made, in this case, from stainless steel. We also learned a lot of other unintuitive pieces. For example, to make something durable, you need to use beautiful materials and materials that are made to last. But you also have to think about how does a package age beautifully? Because it will get scratched, it will get used, and you're not going to be able to make it always look perfect. Now, these are not our examples, but they were inspiration. Here's a shoe we found that Puma made, where they had put in the logo in wax onto the shoe, and it only became visible when the shoe gets dirty. So this idea of aging beautifully, sort of like a red wine. Here, for example, is a coffee cup, where only certain parts of the coffee cup have been glazed, so that when you drink your coffee or your tea, the cup stains and the pattern appears. It's an idea of aging beautifully. So I want to show you an example of how this was leveraged in Loop. This is Pantene, which is a shampoo. This is by P&G. The version here is what's shipping today. This is version 1. But they've already released what next year's version will look like, where this is when they're going to really increase the volume, where they really wanted to focus on this idea of aging beautifully. You'll notice it's 2 layers of metal. And it's 2 layers of metal because the outside layer will get scratched, and the inside layer will resist scratching. So that as it goes from bathroom to bathroom to bathroom, the logo becomes, or the pattern becomes, higher visibility. And ideally, it creates a social contract where when you get this bottle and you see that it's traveled everywhere, you will also be motivated to put it back in the system when there's no shampoo or conditioner inside and let it go around. We also found this beautiful competitive environment where people wanted to just keep innovating. So when P&G released their mouthwash container, now in refillable glass, the next company, Colgate, wanted to innovate even more and think about how they can push the entire process and come up with something better. And it's beautiful to see that in a competitive environment. Then we had to come up with some rules. So the first rule of Loop was that the package must be durable and must be able to go around a minimum of 10 times with an aspiration for 100 uses. And that became very difficult in toothpaste. So with toothpaste, you couldn't do a tube because tubes are not able to be reused in their current method. So here, Signal changed from being a tube to a glass jar. But then you can't put toothpaste into a glass jar easily, so they reformulated the toothpaste to be single-dose dehydrated tablets. So it's no water anymore, because water is a big component of toothpaste. It's perfectly dosed, because it's a tablet form, and of course you can also travel with it. And then there was the question of content. You know, we are working in France, for example, with very, very small companies like Cozy or Brom. These are startups that are engaging in the platform, all the way to the biggest producers in France like Nestle and Pepsi and Coke and P&G and so on. It's really for everyone. And within content, so what we decided that if we cannot recover the content like toothpaste or orange juice, there'd be no point of view. Anyone can work with us, from an oil company to an organic startup, as long as they're willing to move to reusable systems. But then what about content you can recover? Within content you can recover, there's really 2 parts. And this is the best way to understand this is a toothbrush. In a toothbrush, the top of that toothbrush, the part in black, no matter how well I cleaned it, you would never be comfortable using it again. because who would want to use someone else's toothbrush? But the bottom, the part that's in metal, you'd probably be comfortable using as long as it was cleaned well. So this toothbrush, when you send it in, this is a manual toothbrush. It comes apart. The top of the toothbrush goes to recycling, and the bottom goes to reuse. So if it's reasonable to recover, the consumer has to have the option to recover it, and then the component of it that is unreasonable to reuse must go to recycling, and the component that is reasonable to reuse must go to reuse. And I'll play you a little video of how this toothbrush works. So that gives a little taste. And you know, the way this comes to life here, it's all about working with retailers. And we always try to work with a large organization to begin with, because that creates a symbol, it creates funding, it creates the opportunity for us to really innovate. And then we try to bring everyone along in the process, whether it's a small startup that may not even have revenue yet, to a mid-scale company, all the way to the other largest. So the first retailer in the world to partner with Loop, anywhere in the world, was Carrefour, actually here in France, which is why France became the first country where this launched. And so today, if you go to carrefour.fr and you type in Loop into their search engine, you'll see all the information, and that will send you to a website called maboutiqueloop.fr, which is the overall system. There's about 100 products there today. By the end of the year, there'll probably be about 300 or 400 products, because many of these aren't available yet. They come in a few months. And in all cases, you get access to this completely durable ecosystem. By October or November this year, it will be available through the Carrefour Livre Chez Vous ecosystem, so they will do the delivery of the product to you. And what's exciting is they will also pick up all the used product without cleaning or without sorting, which would eliminate garbage trucks from driving in the streets of Paris. And then by next year, you'll start seeing it in stores, where you'll see a section of the store that now is dedicated to durable, reusable product, but still feels the same as disposable, because consumers and individuals want that ease of buying an object and throwing it out. It's not, you know, the act of throwing something out isn't the problem. It's actually very convenient to do that. It's where it ends up is the problem. If it ends up in a landfill, it's very negative. It ends up in an incinerator, it's a little less negative, but still very negative. If it ends up in a recycling center, a little more positive, but if it ends up in reuse, it's the most positive. And so that's how it behaves here, and from there it's going all over the world. So hopefully in this little discussion, you've seen how we try to think about garbage differently. You know, we think that garbage is an anomaly. It's something that was invented in 1950, and hopefully we will de-invent it at some point soon. We try to do that by recycling what can't be recycled, by then using garbage to make products, by then trying to figure out how do we solve for garbage at the root cause by moving away from disposability back into durability, because we used to live in a world without waste. How do we bring that back? But the most powerful actor in all of it is us as individuals, and really making sure that we are eyes open in voting for the future we want, by ideally not buying things. Don't buy Loop, don't buy anything if you can do that. And then if you do buy things that can go around and be regenerative. And that will create change incredibly quickly, not just here, but all over the world. So with that said, thank you.